Hi, everybody. Welcome to this really fun talk where we're going to talk about kids and independence and tech. I am Alexa Arnold, and I'm the CEO of the TAG Movement, which is the organization that has grown out of Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation. We have been working on changing policy and norms across the globe for the last couple of years, and we're moving into a next phase where we can be really supportive of parents, especially, and young people over the course of the next year. We are an organization. Big tech created an economy out of our kids' attention, out of our kids' time, and we are building the way out. And this, at its core, is really about giving kids the childhood that they deserve, which is full of independence, full of play, and full of friendship and fun in the real world. And so I'm here with two people that you know, which is the fabulous Amy Schumer.
True,
Amy,
yes.
Why are we doing this?
Why are you here? Well, just so you know, anybody who is watching this who's not in the room, there is a room full of incredibly involved, considerate parents. And we wanted to gather, we have been gathering to talk about being proactive in protecting our children from the woes of the internet and wanting to be, involved in the future of our schools' policies. And and we've been, mostly just looking to you and your incredible book, The Amazing Generation, that you made with Catherine Price, who was sitting right here. We were lucky to have her in this very same living room. And we want to make sure we're doing the right thing for our kids. So can you just tell us what to do?
Super simple.
Sure.
Yeah, no, so John, kick it off. Your book came out 2.5 years ago. One, what's it about? What's the thesis? What have you learned since? And why do you think it has moved people to act in the way that it has?
So, well, thank you all. The reason why things are going so well here, the reason why so much change is happening, is primarily driven by parents, especially mothers, organizing at the school level. That really is what, as soon as the book came out, that happened immediately. And everyone was surprised by the energy, the force, the passion, the commitment. And that has driven politicians around the world to suddenly recognize, oh, no, it's not crazy for me to suggest phone-free schools or a minimum age of 16. Actually, people are demanding it. Parents are demanding it. So it's always great to talk to a group of involved parents, because this is how we make change.
So John, you usually sum up the book in a simple sentence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in the book, you really focused on mental health, but you've learned a lot since.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us more about that.
Sure. So I can summarize the whole book by saying we have overprotected our children in the real world, where they need to have a lot of adventure and experience. That's what we've done for millions of years. And we've underprotected them online, which the online world wasn't so terrible in the 90s, but it's gotten terrible since the 2010s. And so that combination has blocked their development while exposing them to an extraordinary array of harms. Since the book came out, what I've learned is that the situation is far worse than I thought. It's far worse than what I said, but it's also much more hopeful than I thought, because again, change is happening amazingly fast. So I focused on mental health, especially, it turns out, internalizing disorders, depression, anxiety, self-harm. That's where you get the biggest change, especially in girls, especially in preteen girls. But since the book came out, what I've discovered is that there's so much else going on, and really you have to just keep your eye on on childhood. What are kids doing all day long? And it's if they're swiping all day long, that may not make them depressed, but it means the kids are getting quick dopamine all day long. And then we send them to school where everything's gamified on a computer, quick dopamine. And once kids are getting some quick dopamine, everything else is intolerably boring. Once you settle your kid by giving them an iPad so that you can have some peace, and we've all done this, I did it too. Once you do that, they get used to it, and now you have to always do it or they're going to freak out. And so I now believe that while the mental health damage is incalculable, mind-boggling, the larger damage is the diminishment of the human capacity to pay attention. And that seems to be happening not just to kids, but to all of us. And so, the battle is bigger than I thought.
Cool, so no sweat.
Yeah. So much that I've learned from your writing has been, and part of the Let Grow movement has been encouraging me to push my son and myself to let him do more and be more independent. Can you talk about Let Grow for a little bit?
Sure. So there's really two pieces to this. There's been so much attention on the phone side. That's what we're all worried about, because that's the threat. That's the thing coming at our kids. And people aren't as excited to do the other part, which is what asks us to get over our own anxieties. Now, almost everyone in this room, when you were in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, what did you do after school? I mean, yes, maybe there was piano lessons or Hebrew school or something on a couple of, but like for the most part, you're out with your friends. And that's the exciting part of childhood. And sometimes there were conflicts between groups of friends and pickup games and all sorts of stuff. And that's how kids learn to be self-governing. The whole point of parenthood is to work yourself out of a job. But if we're always there, if we're always supervising, and then we pass them off to another adult who will supervise the soccer practice or then they don't get that chance. So my guru here is my friend Lenore Skenazy, who wrote the book Free Range Kids. She was famous for letting her 9-year-old ride the New York City subway in 2008, I think it was. And people called her the worst mom in America.
I'd like to compete for that.
So Lenore helped me and my wife raise our kids. We really followed her principles and let him walk to school in 4th grade when everybody else waited till 5th grade. And God, were we nervous the first 2 times. By the 3rd time, we weren't nervous. I mean, that's how you get over anxiety. So in 2017, I co-founded a group called Let Grow. Go to letgrow.org with Lenore. And so we work closely together, and that sort of especially focuses on the play side. Oh, and things you can do at the school. We'll talk about that later. Things you can do at the school to encourage more independence at school.
So there's a couple of threads I think to pull out here, and John, you just said it really well, which is this movement isn't anti-tech. It's actually pro-childhood and pro-human flourishing. It's this thing that we're actually all fighting for, not just fighting against. And then you were pointing out too just how vast and widespread this is, how big it is, but it's also deeply personal, and I think that's why every single one of us is sitting in this room. It's why I do this as a mom, is the things I want for my kid and the life I want him to have. And Amy, you've been involved for a while, and you've really cared about this for a while. Why does it matter to you? Why do you want to have this conversation? Why gather a room? Why bring your school community together?
Okay, well, I thought you threw me my one softball, but okay. Well, I've just seen in my own son's behavior the instant addiction of, I can't say it's like crack because I've never had the pleasure myself, but I'm guessing crack is good. We will edit this, obviously. But
Amy Schumer loves crack.
Okay, got it, everybody?
Yeah, that's the social media tagline.
But it was, if he had it for 5-10 minutes, and during COVID when we were all desperate, and I had to really remind myself he doesn't need this, because they really feel like they need it, and how it would take a while each time to sort of get him back, and I think we could all just feel this is wrong, like you're watching Blippi, and I hope I'm not name dropping any household favorites, but you're like, why do I feel bad? And that these are like sort of the least harmful, probably. I mean, don't Google Blippi, obviously everybody has, but
don't worry about it.
But yeah, just with his own behavior, and I definitely am so guilty of it, and we're all doing 1,000 things. We're doing stuff for our kids on our phone, but still it's in our hand when we're with them. But I was so encouraged to see that there were so many like-minded people who were really concerned about this and wanted to be involved.
Let's acknowledge how hard it is to be a parent right now. It's really hard, especially if you don't have family nearby, you don't have this built-in village, this built-in community. Like, the demands have never been harder. Being a working parent is exhausting. And then you're faced with all these choices all the time about how do you do what's best for your kids and also survive and get through a night that is really hard. And so I think there's some value in recognizing all screen time is not created equal.
Yeah, so Alexa said that we're not anti-tech. But I could be a little more specific. We are really, really anti-companies that make their money by giving your kids quick dopamine. And we're really, really against companies that use a business model of engagement-based, where the goal is to keep your kid on all the time. If you buy a toaster, nobody at the toaster company was paid to keep you making toast all day long. Like, they just don't do that, okay?
Yet.
Actually, right now they're connected to the internet, so God knows what's going to happen. Whereas the engineers at Meta I don't know if it's still the case, but a friend told me they were for a long time, they were literally, your bonus is if you can increase time on the site. We have to get those eyeballs. If we don't get them, TikTok's going to get them. We got to get those kids. So we are against certain business models and certain things that tech does. And so a simple principle that I hope will give you some relief, the sort of the dictum I'm now starting to say is long stories good, quick dopamine bad. Humans are storytelling animals. The brain needs lots of patterns. And you get those patterns from being out in the world, but stories, literature, that actually gives you more patterns really quickly, and that's why we want our kids to read books. So a movie, a well-done movie, is not quick dopamine. The kid gets into it because they begin to care about the characters. It's called a state of transportation. You're transported out of yourself into a fictional world. That's great. You want that for your kids, okay? So watching, 1 or 2 movies a week is wonderful. That's a good thing to do. And a movie's long. Whereas if you give your kid a device, it's going to end up with 15-second videos. There's no way to stop that. It's just going, that's where it all ends up because that's the quickest dopamine. If you've taken psychology, if you remember behaviorism, if you give rewards on a variable ratio schedule, that's what a slot machine does. That's what B.F. Skinner did to train pigeons to do amazing things. It's for any animal brain, if you reward it on a variable ratio schedule, you can take control of the animal and their behavior. And that's what these companies have done or trying to do with our kids. And so we've got to stop.
Maybe some of you already heard this, but our school, they're making 6th grade, they're making Amazing Generation part of the curriculum. So thank you very much. But we're like about to do a major rollback, and they're not going to be taking their Chromebooks home at all. They're going to really limit any use. They used to use Schoology and they're limiting all of that to almost nothing. Good. It's like an alternative. And they're not just saying they're completely eliminating it just to cover themselves in case it's necessary, but this is like, something that I think like most of us are pretty relieved about.
Oh, yes.
But can you just tell us your
absolutely.
experience with the one-to-one?
So first, when writing the book, I proposed 4 norms that I was very confident in. And if we do these 4 norms, we roll back the phone-based childhood. And so it's no smartphone before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. And I thought about saying something about computers on the desktops because I thought that they were bad. But I didn't know, and I didn't have the time to do a lot of research while I was writing the book. So I said, you know what, I'm not going to, I have like one sentence, like we're going to have to work on that. But I didn't know when I was writing the book. Now we know. Now it's really clear. Test scores were rising for 50 years in this country until 2012, and then they began to drop. It wasn't because of COVID, it was before then. And we don't know whether it's because kids had phones in their pockets or because the mid-2010s is when we put Chromebooks on their desks. But one thing that we know now, at all levels, it's very hard for anyone to pay attention if there's a computer on their desk. And so I and many huge numbers of college professors are now saying, no screens, you cannot have a laptop in my class. The idea of putting a computer on a kid's desk is probably the most expensive mistake in the history of education because we spent tens of billions of dollars. And the best thing you could possibly say is that it didn't help, it was a waste of money. But I think it's much, much worse. We spent tens of billions of dollars to de-educate our kids, to have them get less out of school, to increase their dopamine addictions. In elementary school, just get rid of them entirely. Have a computer room. They can learn to program or something, that's fine. But I don't think computers have shown their value in education. High school, I can't say that because I just don't know. I'm sure there are uses in high school, but I'm confident that one-to-one devices should never be the case.
A lot of us signed the wait till 8th, but really it's wait till high school.
I know,
but
I tried
it's still
to get
catchy.
it to change.
It's still catchy. Don't worry, we know what you mean.
Okay.
We know what you mean. And then there's, we're not getting them the smartphone, but they're like, but I need to talk to my kid. So I'm going to get him an Apple Watch. Like, what do you say to people who start to sort of look for their, sort of ways around that?
So the main thing is you want to keep your kid protected from strange men who will contact them if they're on the internet. So no internet access. That's very important. And the other thing is, are there a lot of distractions? Is it going to be a lot of quick dopamine for your kid? But it's not a bad thing to be able to call your kid or to have your kid able to call you. So, I generally think an ideal way to start would be by second grade, you can get a tin can, you can get it's like a landline. Kids love it. There's no problem with it. They call grandma, they call their friends.
We have one. It's so cute.
Yeah, it's adorable.
It's been a blast. Yeah.
So you can start, and then they learn basic phone skills. Because one difficulty for Gen Z is they're not comfortable talking on the phone because they never do it. It's all texting. So start with a tin can in elementary school. If you give your kids some independence, I think it's fine to give them away. I gave my daughter a Gizmo watch. It was a big pink thing. It could only call 3 numbers. That was great. Now, once she got to middle school, people made fun of her, and they all had iPhones, and she had this big pink watch. So I got her an iPhone. I didn't know back then. So I think giving them a phone watch, especially if they're going out, in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, is probably fine.
You recently gave a TED Talk, and you introduced a new frame, which is about being a techno-skeptic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tell us why and how to be a techno-skeptic.
Sure. Well, first, so I was born in 1963, and my first memory of the outside world is the moon landing. And for Americans from the 20th century, we're all techno-optimists. It was incredible, and it was our dominance of the world, and it was magical, and it was all good. And we come in, and then you get the internet, which is like God came down to earth and said, hey, do you want to know everything instantly? Sure. So we were wowed, we were awed, and the technology was amazing. And this attitude persists through the 90s into the 2000s. And then the iPhone comes along, and it's amazing. And it's, so we're all so wowed by this that we welcome it into our lives and our kids' lives. And we think, oh, if they're exposed to the technology early, maybe they'll be like Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, and they'll start a company. We were thinking that way because we thought technology is good. And in the history of humankind, it generally has been. But now that the technology is hacking our sociality and hacking our relationships, and AI is coming for everyone's relationships. Every relationship is monetizable. There's no reason you should ever talk to another person if a company can put an AI in their place. At least that's the way they seem to think. So my view, after seeing what we went through with social media, the catastrophic mistake we made by letting it into our kids' lives, by giving these companies legal indemnity, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act said we can't sue them no matter what they do. At least it was interpreted broadly to mean we can't sue them no matter what they do. The first case ever was finally decided just in February or March. But until then, those companies thought we can do whatever the hell we want. No one can touch us. And
what was that case?
So there are thousands of parents who are suing because their kids are dead. There are thousands of young people who are suing because they were damaged by addiction and things. And the key legal innovation, because Section 230 says we can't sue them for whatever they show, whatever they put up. But the new legal theory was, but wait a second, if you designed your product to cause addiction, we have the documents, we know that you said this, shouldn't you be liable for the design of your product? I mean, that's common sense. That's product liability law, which is at the state level. And so the first cases were tested, and the first one to be tried, we won. And that's, I'm told, is rare. When you have a new legal theory, it often takes several trials to get there. And that unlocks the floodgates.
So just because we touched on 230, that's something that I've been really focused on trying to get repealed. Mm-hmm. And that seems like a dead end. This case, that sounds really encouraging, but do you see any way of 230 getting repealed, or are we just kind of hoping on finding this new?
Well, Section 230 had an original purpose that makes a lot of sense, which is you can't hold a company liable for what all billion people post. Like you couldn't have an internet if that was the case. So the original purpose was actually to encourage, I think it was AOL, that they could take down pornography. And if they took things down, they wouldn't be held responsible for what they left up. So the original purpose was very targeted, and it was to protect kids. But the courts, in a series of decisions, the courts interpreted so broadly as to say, oh, tough luck, parent. Your kid's dead. Not their problem. You can't sue them for that.
So what we're talking about here is that tech has gotten a free pass. Think about any product that exists that a company sells to you. Think about, Amy, if you have bought a car seat, has that had to go through trials to be sure that it is safe if it goes through a crash test?
Right.
Yes, think about when you go to a movie theater and those PG-13 R ratings, that is the government saying you can show this movie, but you have to warn people about content. So every industry that sells products, we have safety standards. But tech has gotten this free pass because of Section 230. That is one way, repealing Section 230 is one way that we can solve this, but there are a lot of different policies that state legislators, governors, our Congress, and international lawmakers are putting in place that can help solve this problem. There's no policy that is a silver bullet.
How can we help that? Because I have seen absolutely no movement and met with no politician that has any hope about repealing 230.
Well, so it would not be possible to just repeal it, because then the internet would collapse.
Okay.
But what could be done, I think there's some movement, is just either if Congress would just issue guidance about how it should be interpreted, that would change a lot. Or if it was repealed and something much more targeted was focused. But you can't be giving them indemnity for design decisions. That's insane. So something has to change there. But here's another way to think about it. All of this was inconceivable 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the idea that we would get phones out of schools, the idea that we would raise the age, around the world, the age is going up to 6, that was inconceivable 2 years ago. But what happened as we came out of COVID and we realized, our kids were a wreck during COVID, and we thought it was because of COVID. Well, one of the main things that happened during COVID was we closed the schools for way longer than we should have. We put them on devices for 12 hours a day. And so, yes, they were doing horribly. And then COVID ends, and it comes out, and they're not getting better. I mean, there's a little bit of the rates are down a little bit, but they're basically back to the trend line that they were on. I think it's dawning on people that just having kids on the internet, on platforms, talking with anonymous men where there's no know your customer laws, no liability, that this is completely insane, and that this has to stop. And so as that goes around the world, as the whole world is waking up to realize, we actually do have to protect kids on the internet. I think there will be options. Options will become conceivable that were not conceivable a year ago.
So John, give us some specific policies outside of Section 230 that we can all get behind.
Okay. So when I wrote the book, I was pretty pessimistic about the state of our politics, and I let's assume we never get any help from Congress, which is so far true. We've never, ever gotten any help from Congress in protecting kids online. So I'm a social psychologist. I wrote the book assuming that we have to do this ourselves through collective action. And no smartphone before high school, that can't be a law. When I've been in Europe talking about this, they said, well, we should ban ownership. Like, what are you going to you're going to arrest people for giving their kid an iPad? So that one has to be a norm, not a law. But raising the age to 16, as we do for everything that is addictive, violent, sexual, we have all sorts of reasons in the world why we say there's a minimum age of 18 or 21. So that one, while I thought we were going to be on our own, it turns out a lot of the world is saying, this is crazy, we're just going to put a law on. And a lot of states, this is the other thing I didn't fully understand, so much action at the state level. Nothing in Congress. Meta and the others have huge influence over Congress, but they don't have as much over the states. And governors actually have to deliver for their people. Congress doesn't, the president doesn't. And it's been totally bipartisan. It really has been totally red-blue because they all have kids. So we're finding out that several states have raised the age to 16. Now, of course, Meta and the other companies, they fund all kinds of fake grassroots organizations that sued. So everything's blocked up in the courts for now. But they can't control the rest of the world. And so a dozen countries have committed to following Australia's lead of going to 16. Phone-free schools is not federal, that's state, and 42 states have enacted legislation. 22 or so did it the right way, which is the whole school day, not just during class. So what we're finding is much more legislative action than I ever expected possible. There's a lot more that we can do. On the play side, at Let Grow, we have what's called the Reasonable Childhood Independence Bill, which says that if your kid is caught walking to a store, you can't be arrested. Okay, that's not literally what it says, but because it's unclear all over the country, if a kid is caught walking outside, but some neighbor calls 911, because no one's seen a 10-year-old outdoors since the 90s. So they call 911, and once 911 is called, the police come, and then the parents can be in big trouble. And that's one of the reasons why we're afraid to let our kids out, is because people are afraid they'll get arrested. So there's a bill. It passed in 14 states. That's another example of legislation that can help.
May I ask about Australia and those countries, because haven't they not been that successful even once they passed?
Okay, so this is a big misunderstanding. Good. In Australia, what happened was, first of all, there's no penalty on the kids, no penalty on the parents. This is a law. They said, you know what, companies, you're making money from these kids. You already have a minimum age of 13 that you don't enforce. We're raising it to 16 and requiring you to enforce it. And so they are enforcing it, but very weakly. It's very easy to get around in the first round. And then the regulators, they know that there's all these failures. Now they're contacting the companies and they're saying, no, you have to tighten it up. So that's the way it was planned. Right away, they got a 30 or 40% reduction in social media time. So that's pretty big. But then there was an article, there was an op-ed you might have seen in the Times saying like, oh, it didn't work because they didn't get, if you don't get to 70%, then the norm won't stick. And so too bad it failed. It didn't work perfectly from day one, therefore give up. No, it's working as planned and it's going to get better. And the technology for age verification, now that there's a market for it, there was no market for it before. And now the whole world needs to check, what's your age?
I think this is also where it's, these policies are a starting line. You can't expect a policy to change everything. That's not how the world works.
Well, I think what's now pretty clear is that kids need to develop basic skills. And so at least in elementary school, just get rid of all of it. They should not be on computers at all. It's also really clear when you write on paper and when you read on paper, you retain more than when you do it on a screen. It's also clear that human beings learn from other human beings. That's what we evolved to do. And I can say as a teacher, many of the students are especially motivated by their relationship with me as the teacher. They want to please the teacher, they like the teacher. And all of this tech that's come into our kids' lives was created by people who are good engineers but don't seem to know much about human nature. And they thought if we can just deliver information in this way, that kids will have more information and they'll learn more. But the opposite seems to be true. So back to the point about techno-skepticism. They fooled us on social media with devastating effect. They fooled us on ed tech with devastating effect. They're fooling us now on AI, pushing it into teddy bears and dolls, pushing it into kids, pushing it into your kids' Chromebooks, because if they use Google products, your kids they have full access to Gemini. So they fooled us 3 times with devastating effects. They have earned our distrust. Our attitude has to be from now on, whatever it is, especially when it comes to anything for our kids, assume that it is harmful. And it probably will be. Not all. But how about, for the first time in history, we make them prove it's safe before distributing it to all children?
I had the opportunity to meet with our head of school, our outgoing, sadly, head of school, and he was talking about how to engage change in the schools, it's really important to get the faculty's buy-in, which is, I thought was interesting. It's not like so much a board, whatever. You really need and I was thinking, well, these teachers, everything it's like with these ed tech programs, it's also, it seems a lot easier for them. But I was happy to learn that no, they want their students' minds back. They want the pen to the paper.
I've said some very critical things on Twitter, and then I look at the responses. And I have yet to find a teacher who defends this stuff. So it's not as though the teachers are divided and some love it, some hate it. It's certainly, I hear over and over again, I went into teaching because I like working with kids and now I don't do that anymore. So it is sucking the joy out of teaching. It is delivering bad results. Getting phones out of schools was 100% blessing for the teachers. There's no downside. They love it. They're all enthusiastic.
Can I give you a high five on that, by the way? Okay. I mean, thanks. Really. Like we would still have phones in school if it weren't for you.
Yeah,
seriously.
Well, the book landed. Parents around the country said no more.
Yonder started, and I was using it for my stand-up.
Oh, right. That's right. Back in like the 2010s.
Yeah, it was like just us. And now it's really funny to see the pouches at their school. But we have a no-phone school. Can we talk about AI for a minute?
Yes,
I'm one of those people who thinks we should be invoking the defense apparatus, thinks this is the end of the world. Not because the computers are going to take over, but just what people are going to do with it. But are you the one who mentioned that Esther Perel just had her first session?
Yeah.
But will you?
Yeah, when I was at
this is just anecdotally insane.
Yeah, when I was at TED in April in Vancouver. And my talk was on the Tuesday evening, and on the Monday afternoon, I happened to sit at a table with Esther Perel, the relationship therapist.
Oh, we know.
Okay. And we were talking about AI, as everybody does. And she said that she had just done her first therapy session with a mixed couple. It was a human male and an AI female, and there were some problems in the relationship, and she was helping them work through their problems. Yeah, I see the gasps and that's the way I felt like, right. So the key thing to know for this audience is, let's just talk very briefly about the attachment system. the way the human attachment, the way the mammalian attachment system works, let's say especially human, because they do vary across species, but the way the human works, we have these helpless babies, and whoever's responsive is what the attachment system, it's not the milk, it's the responsiveness is what, okay, this is the person who, responds when I cry. But since the AI is always super responsive, always supportive, never punishes them, never criticizes them, so it stands to reason that our children are going to develop attachments to those. And if they're attached to those, they're going to be less attached to their parents. And that's an almost guarantee of a screwed up life. And this is going to happen at an industrial scale. This is going to happen to millions of kids. It's probably already happening. For older kids, until now, it's been their sex education is going to be hardcore porn, because hardcore porn is everywhere and they all know where to get it. But now it's going to be sexy chatbots. I mean, what Grok can do, the way it talks to kids. So again, it's just mind-bogglingly insane what is happening. And that's why, again, the attitude should be techno-skepticism. I'm sick and tired of, there are pluses and minuses. Well, we need to get more of the pluses. No, this is not working.
Fortunately, there is a bright spot on this issue. This is absolutely horrifying, but the Knicks are not the only ones on fire in New York right now. Our legislators just passed a new bill banning AI chatbots for kids. It's, I think, just gone to the governor's desk. So this is really amazing. This is an issue that is solvable. And I think that's, maybe if we can talk about democracy if you want.
Yeah, can we?
We'll go there, but then we'll go to the hope part.
Yes.
But the hope part I will mention here is that people are acting and there are things we can do. This is something where we have the path. We know the solutions. There are things we can do in our homes, and our legislators are acting in many different forms. So there is some hope. This is scary stuff. It's real. It is scary. But there are things we can do.
We have to raise a generation of citizens who are prepared to be citizens of a democracy, which means self-governing. That's what the American experiment is. It's, can we govern ourselves without a king? That's the experiment. And we did it until very recently. Now it's not so clear what's happening. But if we're raising kids who don't have the experience of working things out on the playground, of coming together and saying, what should we do? No, I don't want to do this. Yes, well, you develop a decision. Like all the stuff when kids are together unsupervised, those are the skills of democracy. So I've decided that the best thing I can do for democracy is help kids have the kind of childhood described in The Amazing Generation.
I think about my son on the playground, and he's 4, and he comes up to me and he's like, this person did this to me, will you go talk to them? And I'm like, no, you've got to go talk to them. And so just talk about that piece too. And we get this question all the time, who is the anxious generation? Is it us or is it the kids? And so talk to us about what can we do as parents, and how can we step back a little bit more to give our kids some space to grow.
Well, once you understand the concept of anti-fragility, that our kids are not fragile. If they're fragile, we have to protect them. But once you understand that our kids are like the immune system. The immune system, if you protect your kid's immune system, no dirt, no germs, you're going to cripple the development of the immune system. It has to be exposed. That's nature's plan. Exposed to what's in the environment, then it gets defenses against that. And so it's crucial that our kids be in groups of kids where sometimes they are excluded, because that's going to happen. And then it hurts, but then they learn how to deal with it. And if you protect them from that, it's like protecting you're going to give them autoimmune diseases if you protect their immune system. So once you understand that, then it's a little easier to just bite the bullet and say, like, I know I could jump in here, I could help, but don't. So you have to let the kids experience the consequences and find their way out. Our kids they're spending so much time on YouTube, and some of that time is assigned by the school, whether it's done in school on a Chromebook or at home as part of the homework. I think YouTube's a great example of how we used to all be techno-optimists. YouTube is amazing, so much useful stuff on it. It'd be hard for many of us to imagine living our lives without YouTube. But over time, YouTube has become TikTok. YouTube Shorts is TikTok. There's no difference. And so now when kids have YouTube time, it often ends up just with short videos. I recently read a book called Reader Come Home by Marianne Wolf, who's a reading researcher. And she talks about how, as we all know in the social sciences, literacy changes your brain. And Marianne Wolf talks about how there's a reading circuit. It's all these disparate parts of your brain that are not normally wired up. But if you're raised with books, they are. And these are the neural bases of democracy. So if we lose books, we are changing the brains of the next generation in ways that I believe will be less conducive to democracy, less able to follow arguments, less able to take in information. So the ideal setup, I think, is the teacher has a computer, she can show videos, she can use it for all sorts of things on a screen. Maybe there's a desktop or a computer in the classroom for certain purposes, and there's a computer room where everybody can be on a computer for certain things. But other than that, these are the most addictive substances in our kids' lives. Like we wouldn't put buckets of candy in the classroom and then expect the kids to just ignore the candy.
Right.
I think this gets to like the whole point of your book is about promoting collective action, and this is kind of a cool room. We're sitting here with parents that all your kids go to the same school, and so there is actually something you can do. And so I think, John, I'm curious for your advice, or I'm curious for ideas that people have, even just based on what you just said, which is like we're all learning these new things. This is not necessarily about blame. This isn't like teachers, administrators, you've done it all wrong. It's, hey, new research is in, we want to change course. We know new things, and we know how this is impacting our kids, how this is impacting learning. How can we do this together?
The incoming head of schools is very like-minded and has kids, and she's thinking the same way we're thinking. So I'm encouraged, but I don't want to be naive. We need big change.
Yeah. So school administrators are under a lot of different pressures from different constituencies. And the parents is one of them. But you need to, if you come together and just put a little more force on, but the thing is, they've all read The Anxious Generation.
Right.
And most of them probably are very sympathetic.
Put the dust off your shoulder.
No, I mean,
It's true.
I know that in education
I
circles
know people
they read
saw
it.
Trainwreck. It's fine.
Anyway, the point is, they might even welcome the pressure. They might know that it's the
I
right
think
thing
at the
to
end of the day, they need to hear that you support them
Yeah.
and the decisions that they might make.
Are there any protections that you've heard of that work? And also, how do you help your kids differentiate tech that can help them versus tech using them? I was looking at that stupid Constellation app that's probably not real, and porn popped up, and no, that's not like my algorithm on my phone anyway.
Sure, yeah.
It's terrifying.
When I hear about the cat and mouse game and the monitoring software and the tracking software and all that, here's the policy that I wish I'd had with my kids. I was very good at keeping them off social media because that's what I was studying. But I'd heard back then, like, well, there's no evidence that screen time overall, now there is evidence. But so I was pretty lax about their computer, and it was COVID, so they had to have their computer all the time. But the policy that I wish I'd had was no screens in the bedroom ever. And for the oldest people, I'm probably the oldest person in the room.
No, girl, you look good.
When I was a kid, like if someone said they had a TV in their bedroom, we'd all be like, that's insane. Like, don't you watch it all the time? Like, nobody had a TV in their bedroom. And now all our kids have screens in the bedroom, and they're vastly more powerful than a TV ever was. I mean, so, I think in elementary school we can be pretty firm and just say, the more screen-free, the better, other than movies. By high school, I just don't know. By high school, you probably do have to be letting them have more experiences. And so again, they're like just not in the bedroom. That's where the worst stuff happens. That's where the sextortion happens, the nude photos, all that is in the bedroom. They're not going to do that if the computer is in the living room. About a month ago, a big thing happened in Los Angeles, which is that the Los Angeles school, the board of LAUSD, voted unanimously to get computers entirely out of pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade. Okay, it's crazy that they're in pre-K and kindergarten, but they are. They're shot through everywhere. But the exciting thing is, we had nothing to do with that. We didn't even know about it until it happened. And what that means is that the whole like, get the tech out of our kids' face movement, the parents in LA were pushing, the school board was sympathetic, and they did it, and now that's happening around the country. Now, so far it's concentrated in the lower parts of elementary school. I think it should be all of elementary school. But if you get a group together, or whatever the mechanism is, if you have a PTA, whatever it is, you're going to find that they're so much more receptive now than they would have been 6 months ago, because this is happening everywhere, and I'm pretty confident it's going to go quickly. Now, getting phones out of schools was easy. You just lock them up. Getting the computers out is hard because there's grading, there's testing, there's state evaluations, and some states have mandated that everyone, including kindergartners, have to use an iPad. Like someone has to look into the corruption there. How did that get into law? But what I'm saying is, this is going to change quickly in the next year. So push. If the harder you push now, the faster it will change, and it would really go.
Instead of like technology is evil, why aren't we just buying books? Like this is what.
I'm really realizing, like, it has to be books. It's not just like reading on a screen. And our kids do read a lot of short things, but my kids went to New York City public schools. They read very few whole books. So yes,
It's
I think
crazy
we did,
that you
when
just
we
said
were,
that. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy. But when I was young, like the library was a big deal, and the adults all made a big deal out of books and reading. And of course, this the librarian at your school, I'm sure, does too. But if the kids have access to touch screens, everything else is going to pale by comparison.
Yeah.
I think this also gets to, like, John, your book worked and it broke through because at the time, 2.5 years ago, we needed the wake-up call. That is like, this generation has become more depressed and anxious, and they have lost their attention span. Like, this is a massive, massive problem. But I think you're getting at what is the next wave of this movement, which is we have to sell the vision of the future, which is nostalgia is trending, analog is trending.
Yes.
Like, there is a vision of this future that's actually quite joyful.
That's right.
And
books,
People are
musical
getting excited.
instruments.
Yeah.
How can you
Yeah.
encourage more communal efforts with parents who are like-minded of sort of a more nostalgic way? And we do have each other's emails, so we should all hang out.
Yeah. Kids are not desperate to be on a phone or a computer or online. They're desperate to not be left out. They're desperate to not be the only one. So a concept that's in the book, and it's from Lenore, but someone else originally originated, called a playborhood. What a playborhood is, we've got these 7 families who all live within walking distance, and the kids know, like, these are the 7 families in the playborhood. And they don't have to get permission. I mean, if you don't want anyone at your house that day, you can say, Billy, nobody here today. But otherwise, the kids can roam around between the houses. They have to stay together. You can't leave anyone alone. And that's fantastic, and that works really well. And one of the most moving things, a friend of mine, his daughter lives in Denver, and he sent a video and a report from his daughter. And she said, like, she'll be upstairs on a work call, and all of a sudden there's like a herd of cattle racing through the house. And they go to the backyard. They do something in the backyard. And they ditch their bicycles in the front yard. And then the herd comes racing through again, and they go somewhere else. Like, that's the vision.
That's the dream.
Kids deciding what they want to do and doing it, and mixed age play groups. So keep your eye on this positive vision of childhood. And the thing is, all of our kids have seen movies that took place in the 90s. They've seen movies about what it used to be a kid in the 80s and 90s. So they know how much fun it was, and we can give that back to them.
How can we help our kids who are suffering, but they're addicted, they're locked in, and they want out? They can see that it's a problem.
That's right. Gen Z, a thing I can say with absolute confidence about them is they are not in denial. I have not yet met a member of Gen Z who says, like, no, these are good for us. No, we love living this way. They know that this sucks. They know that social media is destroying a lot of their friends and sometimes them. And so that's really encouraging. Now, you can't take one kid and say, therefore, you're coming out of it. I mean, you can, but it's very, very hard. But if you do it as a group, and so one of the techniques is, don't just make it like we're taking things away. We're giving you opportunities. Like, you know what? Look, do you guys want to go to Coney Island this weekend? I'll pay. You can take an Uber. I'll pay. Whatever it's like. Just go unsupervised. Go have fun. So working with other parents of the other kids to give them that kind of fun, exciting childhood. That's something that we can all do together.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much, Jonathan. And we want to thank both of you, Alexa, so much for coming. Thank you for your work. Thank you for coming. Can I have a selfie with you?
Okay, and let's go Knicks.
Yeah, let's go Knicks.